masterclass. Today's topic is sustaining engagement at work with Donaldson Feilder. She is an expert in the field. She is an occupational psychologist and coaching psychologist. And she works with organisations to achieve sustainable business performance through improvements. So it looks at the long term. And she's very interested in employee health, well-being and engagement. She is an author. Her book is at the back, if anybody's interested in buying it. We'll talk about the name of those. Preventing stress in organisations, but with a positive angle, so how to develop positive managers. And she's spoken at a number of conferences. She's also a media commentator. She's involved with the Chartered Institute for Personal Development, written reports for them, the Health Services Executive. And she's involved in the British Psychological Society. I don't know when she gets the time to do this stuff. There's a new group around the media and public promotion. And she's also interested in sharing freely available research-based guidance. So after today's session, you will get a copy of the slides, and she has put together a summary of information that's out there, that's evidence-based. So over to Emma. We'll have another break about 5 to 8 with more tea and coffee, and we'll finish probably just before 9. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Welcome everybody, it's lovely to see you all. I thought since we're quite a select group, it might be nice just to go around and hear a bit about who you are and where you're from, and I'd be really interested to know what your interest is in employee engagement. Obviously I've prepared some slides, so I'm hoping that those are going to meet some of those needs, but we can engage in a discussion to kind of flex and make sure that what you're interested in gets covered. So I'd be happy to say a bit about who they are and what they would like out of this evening. If you'd like to start, so you're looking at the aim of all the way around. Thank you very much.
I'm Fiona Stockless, I'm a psychologist. I work for the East London NHS Foundation Trust. Really prevent disabilities. I'm interested today, I think it's particularly relevant to the team because we used to be a really keen, motivated team that worked hard and kind of encouraged each other, and I think that that's slipping now because there's been threats of redundancy for over a year. And even though today we found out that that's not going to happen for some of us it will, and there's going to be issues within the team, I can feel it. So I think anything that we can do to prevent things getting worse and re-engage us in our work. Not too much pressure, don't worry.
Great, thanks very much indeed.
My name is Sina Benzale. I'm a master's student from Goldsmith doing occupational psychology. I did occupational psychology because, as your book says, I really want to help out organisations preventing stress and to be minimalising it. So, I'm still training and looking forward to becoming potentially an occupational psychologist.
Any particular interest in engagement? Or?
Yes, I'm actually really interested in listening to you today and seeing the other side, basically the other side of engagement, because I already had 2 big companies, occupational companies, they came to our university and they gave us a workshop on engagement and how to engage employees, how to assess the engagement levels. So I'm interested into your perspective.
Yeah, interesting, thank you. I'm Kate. I started my master's in occupational psychology at Surrey in October, and health and wellbeing and engagement with an occupational psychologist is an area that I'm really interested in, that I'd like to know more about. Great, thank you.
Hi, my name is Samiha. I'm doing a master in occupational psychology at City University. I have an interest in well-being in the workplace and stress in particular, but I'm interested in your topic and it's about engagement from a positive psychology perspective. So it would be interesting to hear.
My name is Linda. I'm the HR manager for a charity for wellbeing, employee engagement, and we're in the process of revamping all of what we do at the moment, because we've got a new operations director who's just arrived and wants to change everything. So, but also this is particularly relevant because we are about to relocate. We're based in London in Essex at the moment, and we're about to relocate, or hoping to relocate, into the city next year. And so it's, keeping everybody on board, and how we're going to, we're just starting all the processes with all of that. So this has come at the right time.
Right. Interesting.
I don't work in occupational psychology.
We're going to break them on now.
Yeah, sure, correct. Yes. I project manager at amass, and work in an environment which has a lot of different parties, different companies we have to work with, and they're involved in everything we do. So the more parties, the more different ways of working, and the more there are opportunities to get a bit frustrated or stressed about things. So sometimes you can't change it, but understanding it may help. That's what I want.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jackie. I'm the PMO manager at amass in Odyssey. This guy's it. And I have a team working for me on site. We work for Logicalis, so we're a managed service on site, so it's all about delivery, and obviously it's quite an aggressive environment, so it's quite stressful as well. So for good to see how it can reach that.
Hi there, I'm Sophie. I'm also a master's kind of citizen, so I work on IT as a project manager, but my degree is in psychology, so I met half hour NLP event. So over the years in IT, I've seen good managers and bad managers, and I'm interested in the practical side and that's what motivates people to be a manager.
My name's Martin. I'm also from IT at Marks and Spencer's. I've managed teams of varying sizes in the past, and the interest of me was coming along as a refresher and see what good looked like nowadays.
Nowadays. Yes, that's an interesting question. Has it changed? Great. Thank you very much indeed. Brilliant. Well, it's real interesting kind of diversity, so I'm hoping that we can share and discuss things as we go through. And it sounds like some of you are interested in that piece about your own well-being and your own engagement. So let's try and draw that out. Just show you what the agenda that I've drawn out is, and it is quite focused on the manager's role, but we can box and box and talk a bit about individual levels as well, if that's what people are interested in. So I'm going to start off just by looking at what is engagement, given the range of definitions out there. Then I'm going to move on and talk specifically about sustainable engagement, which is a concept that we've developed really, and I'll explain why we're talking about why do we want it not just employee engagement, but something that is sustainable long term, and what's going on there. So we'll talk a bit about that. Then I'm going to talk about the research that we've done, specifically looking at what good management looks like in this field. So looking very specifically at what do line managers need to do to create sustainable engagement in their teams. Probably take a break around then, and then afterwards just really hone in on, so what does this mean? What are the implications for organisations, for managers, for teams, and that sort of thing. And then just round off talking a bit about the plans for our research over the next 2 to 3 years, and how we're taking this forward and looking at some of the surrounding issues. So, starting off then with what is employee engagement, there are an incredible number of different definitions, and I think if you've had people come in and talk to you about engagement and different companies, you'll find different companies are talking about it from a different perspective. But probably the commercial providers perhaps have more similarity to one another than they do to the academic literature, because if you then look at the academic literature, it has a different slant on employee engagement again. So what I thought we'd do is, rather than me just spiel off a whole lot of definitions, is just take a few minutes now for you to talk amongst yourselves. So if you want to turn to the person sitting next to you, I think you are willing to move and work in a pair as well. Just take a few minutes in pairs, discussing what do you mean by employee engagement. So what does it mean as a construct or as a concept for you? So if you have those little discussions, then we'll come back into the group and kind of share some of your ideas and then compare it to the definition that we've been using in our research, which has attempted to kind of synthesise a lot of different definitions. So this is a challenge to see whether the things that you talk about fit with what we've been using as our definition as well. So over to you, have a little discussion and then we'll come back together. Okay, have you all had a chance to sort of air your thoughts on this topic, or do you need a few minutes? Happy to come back in the group? Okay, so let's hear from you some of the things that you've been talking about. So what are the elements that you've been sort of coming up with in terms of what you mean by employee engagement? Anyone just shout out?
Motivation.
Motivation, yes. Great.
Direction.
Direction, yeah. So direction about where you're going, yeah. Great.
Ownership.
Ownership. Great, yeah.
Committed.
Committed, yes. Great.
Energy and drive.
Energy and drive, yeah. Great.
Initiative.
Initiative.
Going the extra mile for people.
Going the extra mile, yeah.
Purpose.
Purpose, yeah. Satisfaction, yeah.
We spoke a bit about values and being productive and
We talked about what the engagement was between the employee, but with not just their manager and the team members, but the company they work for, clients.
Yes. So engage means two things. Engaging, yeah. Any other concepts or ideas and things that you're talking about?
Yes, doing employees engaged if they're doing the best of their abilities, if they're working towards their best ability most of the time.
Yeah.
Appreciation.
Appreciation. So feeling appreciated, or that sense of feeling appreciated. Yeah.
Mutual support.
Mutual support. Yes. That captured it all. Great. So it's really interesting, isn't it? And do you see how there's quite a broad scope of different things coming out here when we're talking about engagement? And I think it picks up that in terms of the sort of practitioner versus the academic approach. Practitioner approach tends to be very much about things like going the extra mile, being committed, doing the best for your organisation, for your management team, and all of those sorts of things. Whereas the more academic literature tends to talk more about that sense of drive and energy and the kind of individual level indicators, if you like. So when we set out on this path, looking at employee engagement, we tried to sort of bring all the different definitions together. Now, one of our key sponsors was the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, the CIPD, so we did draw particularly on some of the definitions that they have been using. And what we came up with, but integrated other things into it, what we came up with was that engagement has three elements. So it's focused on what you're doing, and I think that's some of that sort of purpose, isn't it? And being clear about what's happening, and that's more of a cognitive thinking piece. Then the second area is feeling good about yourself in your role and about the organisation. So that's more of that feeling piece, that's that engage with piece, isn't it? It's more of an emotional